good to have you with us on the 9 p.m. edition of the Urban Debate. Viewers, this is a conversation that has already begun in many parts of our country. There is no decision yet by the government. The government has given this time to various states to talk to the schools, for schools to talk to the parents and figure out a plan about reopening schools in times of a pandemic. While we are easing the restrictions as far as the lockdown is concerned, there is one change that hasn't happened so far, which is the reopening of schools. And that's going to be a difficult one. That's actually going to be perhaps one of the biggest challenges that we will see, because after all, with children, it is difficult to impose norms. It is difficult to control them, to explain to them that they shouldn't interact with each other. They should maintain distance. And it will become a big challenge for the schools, the staff, the teachers, and everybody else. The conversation has begun. Karnataka, in fact, has been the first state that has gone ahead and already put this out, has asked schools to talk to the parents. In fact, there is a petition that has already been put on change.org with, I believe, over 5 lakh parents saying, no, this is not the time to open the schools, not even in July. We don't think we are ready yet to send our children to school. What is your own view? Pick up the phone, dial the number and join our conversation. This is going to be a first of many conversations we will have as we move closer to that point where we may start looking at reopening our schools. We still have about a month to go before any decision is possibly taken. But let's say good evening to our panelists tonight. Dr. LIPIKA Nanda, Vice President for Multisectorial Planning in Public Health at PHFI. Dr. ANANT BHAN, also a researcher of global health, bioethics and health policy. Kulbhushan Sharma, President for National Independent Schools Association. And also representing the schools, I have Mr. Viral Shah, member of School Management Committee for Shiksha Sagar High School. But first up, actually, let me go to the health experts, who are also involved in policy making. And Dr. Nanda, let's begin with you. What are potentially, the things that we know about exposing children to COVID, the risk of exposure, the kind of impact that it can have on them, because that will essentially be the first step before we design any policy about reopening schools or even allowing children to come outdoors?
Absolutely. I think there isn't a straightforward answer to your question, but I want to also I have a few points to make. Number one is that we have now understood that we have to learn to live with this virus. It is going to be the new normal. It is not about another 10 days, 15 days, 1 month, 6 months. This virus is going to be with us for the next 2-3 years. So until a vaccine is developed and until, proper treatments are also available. So in this scenario, can we just lock down all the schools and the children and kind of deny them the education? I don't think that's a solution. And if you look at the evidence around COVID in children, the global evidence and the Indian evidence, there is very low mortality in children. And also prevalence of COVID in children is very low. And even if children have COVID, they have very mild symptoms that are associated with COVID. So I don't think that children actually are at risk. It is the elderly that are at risk. So even if we open schools, I think the elderly teachers have to be protected within schools. That is also my next point. But then we cannot have one all India policy for school opening. I think we have to look at school districts, whether those areas are affected or not. What are the catchment areas? They also have to be looked upon. Where are children coming from? Are these schools completely reliant on buses, or do children come from nearby? I think the phased up opening of school has to take into account all these points with respect to children. Then another very important point I want to make is all the policies around physical distancing. Will it work with children? I think it's very unlikely that, physical distancing, mask wearing, it is very going to, children are not going to comply with it. And so what needs to be done is public health experts need to work with sports personnel and professionals and come out with solutions of which games, which sports are kind of, result in less physical contact and those can be kind of suggested for the schools. Plus, we also have to keep in mind all the marginalized kids in this country. That, what are they doing when their parents have started going to work? Are these kids safe at home? And probably school is also a good place for them to come and have a protected environment compared to what they would usually do, roaming around and probably kind of putting their health into risks. So these are a few points I just wanted to make with respect to opening of schools. We have to keep in mind.
No, in fact, you're right. While we have to keep in mind, even for the marginalized segment where, parents are out the whole day working, there's nobody to take care of the children. That's actually true across segments as well. Even in the urban cities, I think the biggest concern that many parents have is that if the offices start opening and they have to go, the daycare may not, and they don't even know what to do about that, where to leave their child. They can't even ask, their parents or the elderly in the family to help, because then you risk them getting exposed to the infection, which may become problematic, like you also pointed out, even for the senior teachers. That's one concern. But let's get a view in from those who will be closely linked to what finally happens. Kulbhushan Sharma, President for National Independent Schools Association. Sharma ji, आपका क्या व्यू है, एसोसिएशन का भी क्या व्यू है, क्या जुलाई से शुड वी स्टार्ट ओपनिंग द स्कूल्स?
देखिए, जो एसोसिएशन के व्यू या एजुकेशन के व्यू से जहां तक मैं बात कहूं कि जुलाई में स्कूल को स्टार्ट कर देना चाहिए, एक आम आदमी की तरह, क्योंकि मैं बजट प्राइवेट स्कूल्स को रिप्रेजेंट करता हूं, 70,000 से ज्यादा स्कूल्स हमारे मेंबर हैं, और मैं समाज के अंदर भी बहुत घूमकर देख रहा हूं कि जो बच्चे हैं वो घर में नहीं बैठ रहे हैं। जो हम डिस्टेंसिंग की भी बात कर रहे हैं, मेरे ख्याल से अगर वो स्कूल में आएंगे तो ज्यादा बेटर सेफ होंगे। डॉक्टर नंदा ने भी जैसे कहा कि जो कोविड है ये ज्यादातर एल्डर जो लोग हैं, बड़ी उम्र के लोग इससे सफर हुए, बच्चे बहुत कम सफर हुए। और अगर आप कम्युनिटी में देखेंगे तो इस समय भी बच्चे कम्युनिटी में आपस में खेल रहे हैं विदाउट सोशल डिस्टेंसिंग। तो स्कूल में आकर मेरे ख्याल से शायद प्रॉपर सोशल डिस्टेंसिंग भी रह पाएगी। और दूसरा और भी इशू है कि ज्यादातर अगर लॉकडाउन जब खुलेगा तो पेरेंट्स जो है वर्किंग हैं, तो घर में बच्चों को रखना भी जो है एक बहुत बड़ी प्रॉब्लम होगी, गवर्नमेंट के लिए भी, पेरेंट्स के लिए भी। और जो एजुकेशन में गैप भी नहीं पड़ना चाहिए। इन सारी अगर कंडीशंस को आप देखें तो मेरे को लगता है स्कूल इज मच बेटर सेफ देन जो कंडीशंस हैं। तो जुलाई के अंदर अगर स्कूल खोला जाए और सोशल डिस्टेंसिंग की भी कुछ गाइडलाइंस को फॉलो किया जाए तो स्कूल खोलना एक बेहतर विकल्प होगा इस समय, और वो एक सही मैसेज जाएगा।
Okay, Mr. Viral Shah, member of the School Management Committee for Shiksha Sagar High School. What's your view, Mr. Shah? What should happen? Are we, will we have to look at splitting the classes further, or making alternate days or different kinds of shift system? How do we go about reopening our schools?
Before starting the school, we'll have to educate the kids with the online classes what we are going. I think we should educate them what is the COVID. Now, as they know what is this COVID-19 and what are the symptoms and what are the situations and what are the criteria for this. We should keep them posted that once the school starts, how they have to treat in the school. They have to maintain a social distancing, a pure vegetarian diet has to be followed up, regularly washing up the hands, wearing up the mask. Yes, the mask, they cannot wear it up the full time, but they need to wear it up. They need to cover their nose while sneezing, coughing. So these are some kind of things what they need to maintain the distances and thought right now before starting. And the school definitely, it should start with an odd and even days.
Okay, so start the schools with odd and even date. Dr. ANANT BHAN, what's your own view? Because yes, while children perhaps have a stronger response system to this, and the rate that we've seen globally is lower, but it's also very difficult to control the children, and they could then become carriers of the infection.
Yes, thank you, Tanvi, for having me. So I think as Dr. Nanda was highlighting earlier, it's now well known that kids usually don't have serious infection. But what is also well known is that kids do get infected, and they usually are asymptomatic in many cases or have a very mild infection. Now, the challenge actually is going to be to open up schools when these kids go, whatever kind of screening you do, you do temperature screening, you do symptomatic screening. Many kids who are infected might pass through that, and they will infect other kids. Those kids will go back home, and the people who will actually be at risk are their parents, especially if they're middle-aged with comorbidities, their grandparents, so their dadas, dadis, nanas, nanis, and other older members of the family who actually bear the brunt of a potential infection. So in many ways, the kids are actually going to be the vectors of infection. So that's one thing we need to keep in mind when we make decisions about opening, that we are going to open ourselves up for that spread of infection via the kids. Again, it's going to be a risk-benefit calculus. We have to keep that in mind when we make that calculus. The second thing I think is that, online education is also a bit classist in nature. We've already seen the challenges of those from lower socioeconomic backgrounds being able to not access online classes. We just had a young Dalit girl who died by suicide, I think a day ago in Kerala. She was access online education from school, and she was essentially morose about it, very depressed about it. And that is true of many families. Not everyone has access to data or computers or laptops or even mobile smartphones for that matter. The third thing is there are mental health consequences of both opening up and not opening up, right? So of opening up, people will be stressed about the fact that their kids could get infected. As was being pointed out, younger kids especially, how can you really make them wear masks for 4 hours, 5 hours, 6 hours of schooling? Can you really maintain distance and that kind of oversight? It's pretty difficult even if you use a shift system. On the other side, there are pressures of homeschooling as well. On pressures for the parents. As parents rejoin work and it's difficult to keep kids at home without some adult supervision. Older kids will face difficulty of being at home and not being able to access, their friend circle, going out, and the social interactions, which are an important part of anyone's personality development, and the lack of that if schools are not functional. So as you can see, there are both pluses and minuses. I think at least for the next couple of months, it's probably better to on wait and watch. As we know that the case count is given the risks involved, it might be better to wait and watch for a little bit more. I don't think we should be cancelling the whole year, because some people have suggested a whole gap year. In many ways, a school year can also be overrated in India. We know, how much pressure there is on getting your education and finishing it in time, etc. But it won't harm a lot of people also to just have that year off as well. So, that's the other thing to keep on the table. Though I think, that should be the last of our options. But let's remember that the health of our children, their families, as well as our teachers, etc., is also kept. So I think overall, let's look at it as a risk-benefit calculus, and then in terms of decisions about opening up schools and then later colleges as well, we should take those decisions.
Okay, let me also bring in some of our viewers calling in right now with their views. Uma is on the phone line calling us from Delhi. Good evening, Uma. What is your view?
I'm not in favor of opening the schools from the month of July. It's too early for the schools to open. When the pandemic levels are going so high, I am calling from Delhi, and my kids are in a well-known school in a good school in Noida, when all the borders are sealed till this time. And how can we expect the schools to be open without having any guidelines, without having any protocols in just another 22 days? I don't know whether this is a political agenda or there is some commercial thing going on around this, but then at least kids should not be, the school should not be on the stake at this stage of time. And even if these guidelines or protocols are issued for the schools, so do we get that protocols then signed by the management of the schools? Will they agree and abide by those guidelines or the SOPs that will be prepared? And who will be responsible? Is it about, is it a way of taking the fees from the school, which we are already paying as the schools are conducting the online classes? But I think it's too early for the schools to open. Because, the kids, how, especially...
Okay, thank you for calling in. Yes. Yes, I know what you're saying. How do you expect children to follow these rules? Becomes extremely difficult to constantly ensure they do this. Wear your mask, wear your gloves, don't play with each other, maintain your distance, sit at your own desk, don't share your food. But I'm just, because you raised few questions there, Ruma, let me see if I have some of those answers, because this is what the Union HRD Minister actually said just a few days ago. There was a news briefing, and he did say that it is possible to have classes with maybe 30% students, which thereby means that schools will have to perhaps come up with a system of splitting the classes into more sections, of having 2 shifts or 3 shifts, of maybe having classes on alternate days for different sections, and work out a system like that. And that is a modality that even the NCRT is actually looking at right now. The minister also said that NCRT is exploring a system for opening schools, that individual schools will also have to prepare a checklist of all the issues that are there and that have to be resolved. Then the CBSE will share this checklist again, and all of them will sit and discuss it, that health, hygiene and safety protocols will have to be set. So yes, there will be some amount of onus on the management of the school as well to ensure that the health, hygiene, safety protocols are set, are defined and then are followed. And to the points that our experts were also making, there has to be a focus on a smooth transition for children who are studying at home right now to when they come back to classes, partial studies at home and then in school, and of course ensuring that all of this, they're able to also deal with this mentally and it doesn't impact their mental health. All of these issues will have to be factored in. So right now what's happening is that all states have been told that the schools should speak to the parents, conversations should happen, and then the states and the center in consultation will take a decision by the month of July. Now Karnataka has already started that process. Other states will also begin to speak to the schools before they're given their own recommendations to the center. This is how the process will be. Now the intent tonight is to bring out the various concerns that may be there and possible solutions that may be there that we have to look at. For example, I have a concern, and maybe Kulbhushan Sharma ji can help me with that. Sharma ji, different schools in different areas in different cities में have a different system. अभी मुंबई और दिल्ली में आज केसेस बहुत ज़्यादा है, इसलिए मुंबई में तो लॉकडाउन का कुछ भी रिलीफ अभी ज़्यादा नहीं दिख रहा है, लेकिन बेंगलुरु में उतना नहीं है, वहाँ पे कम है, वहाँ पे मूवमेंट ज़्यादा हो गई है. कुछ और छोटे शहर है वहाँ पे तो बिल्कुल खुल चुका है, जो ऑरेंज जोन से ग्रीन जोन से. तो वो जो प्रॉब्लम आएगी कि अलग शहरों के या एक ही शहर के अलग पार्ट्स में लॉकडाउन के डिफरेंट रूल्स हैं, कैसे हम इंश्योर करेंगे कि सबको एक ही सेम लेवल का एक्सेस मिले, पढ़ाई हो और वो एक ही जैसी तैयारी फिर कर पाए, नहीं तो कोई आगे रह जाएगा, कोई पीछे.
देखिए, इसमें ये समस्या तो आएगी कि जहां कोविड की ज्यादा प्रॉब्लम्स हैं वहां स्कूल खोलना, पेरेंट्स का एक डर भी है कि जहां पर इस तरह की समस्या है तो वो बच्चों को भेजने में कतराएंगे भी. और किसी भी स्कूल को स्टार्ट करने से पहले, जैसे पेरेंट्स के और सबके कंसर्न्स आ रहे हैं, पहले टीचर्स को और स्कूल्स को एक स्मॉल ट्रेनिंग भी देनी पड़ेगी कि किस प्रकार वो सोशल डिस्टेंसिंग करें या बच्चों की सेफ्टी के लिए जो गाइडलाइंस एक गवर्नमेंट की तरफ से बननी चाहिए जिसको वो फॉलो कर पाए. तो ये सिस्टम भी बहुत बनाने पड़ेंगे. अब जो ऑड इवन या शिफ्ट्स की बात हो रही है, तो शिफ्ट्स में स्कूल चलाना एक बड़ा मुश्किल सा काम होगा, क्योंकि अगर 2 शिफ्टों में आप स्कूल चलाएंगे तो टीचर को 11-12 घंटे कैसे एंगेज करेंगे, ड्राइवर्स को कैसे एंगेज करेंगे, ये बहुत सारी प्रॉब्लम्स हैं. अब जहां पर आपकी बात सही है कि जहां कोविड का इस समय ज्यादा केसेस हैं, तो वहां पर स्कूल्स को चलाना एक डिफरेंट बड़ा सिचुएशन है. और आप जो इक्वालिटी की बात कर रहे हैं कि सबको कैसे इक्वल एजुकेशन मिले, तो उसमें ऑनलाइन एजुकेशन के कई जगह पर जो है आपको इस तरीके से सिस्टम से कि कुछ बच्चे कुछ परसेंटेज आ जाए, कुछ ऑनलाइन साथ साथ स्टडी करें, दोनों सिस्टम को पैरेलल चलाना पड़ेगा कि जो बच्चे घर में भी बैठे हैं उनको भी एजुकेशन मिले, और जो स्कूल में जहां पर कोविड का ज्यादा नहीं है वो स्कूल आए, तो दोनों पैरेलल सिस्टम बनाकर बच्चों को, ताकि हर एक को एजुकेशन मिले, इस तरह की गाइडलाइंस हर एक पूरा सिस्टम गवर्नमेंट को बनाना पड़ेगा. और स्कूल्स इसके लिए तैयार हैं कि अगर दोनों तरह के सिस्टम, पेरेंट्स को भी कॉपरेट इस पे करना पड़ेगा और गवर्नमेंट को भी कॉपरेट करना पड़ेगा, जिससे जो है दोनों क्षेत्र के बच्चों की पढ़ाई का नुकसान ना हो. लेकिन इस पे बहुत मिलजुल कर जो है काम करने की सरकार, पेरेंट्स और स्कूल संचालक, ये तीनों. अब जो रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी की, जैसे एक पेरेंट ने बात कही कि कौन रिस्पॉन्सिबल होगा, तो जो सैनिटाइजेशन वगैरह स्कूल का जो करने का सिस्टम है, हमारा ये सुझाव है कि लोकल बॉडी डिपार्टमेंट इसकी जिम्मेदारी ले, क्योंकि अगर स्कूल्स को जिम्मेदार ठहराया जाएगा तो स्कूल्स का भी एक डर रहेगा कि अगर उनको मिस हैपनिंग हुई, अगर स्कूल को जिम्मेदार ठहराया तो स्कूल भी स्कूल खोलने से कतराएंगे, मैनेजमेंट भी स्कूल खोलने से कतराएंगे। इसलिए सरकार को मिलकर एक अच्छी ऐसी योजना बनानी चाहिए कि सैनिटाइजेशन का काम जो है वो लोकल बॉडी डिपार्टमेंट को देना चाहिए, स्कूल्स के हाथ में नहीं देना चाहिए। और स्कूल्स को पूरी ईमानदारी से काम करते हुए, लेकिन अगर उनको रिस्पॉन्सिबल ठहराया गया किसी वजह से कि स्कूल रिस्पॉन्सिबल होंगे तो मैनेजमेंट का भी डर रहेगा स्कूल खोलने का। तो ये सारी प्रॉब्लम्स को मद्देनजर रखते हुए स्कूल्स खोलने का फैसला लेना चाहिए। और मैं तो इस हक में हूँ कि जितनी जल्दी
कुलभूषण जी, लेकिन कुछ रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी तो स्कूल्स को लेनी ही पड़ेगी। ऐसा नहीं हो सकता कि सारी फीस इकट्ठी कर ले, वो बिजनेस भी चला ले, अपना स्कूल खोल भी ले और फिर कहे कि हमारी रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी नहीं, वो सिविक अथॉरिटी आके करे। वो कुछ रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी तो स्कूल्स को लेनी ही पड़ेगी, नहीं तो पेरेंट्स नहीं भेजने वाले अपने बच्चों को। हमने अभी सुना एक कॉलर का फोन था दिल्ली से, वो यही बात बोल रही थी कि नहीं तो स्कूल्स पे भरोसा कैसे किया जाएगा।
देखो, स्कूल रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी लेगा, लेकिन कोविड में आपने देखा कि ब्रिटिश प्राइम मिनिस्टर को भी कोविड हुआ, कोरोना हुआ। इसका मतलब ये नहीं है कि अभी हम उसको पूरी गवर्नमेंट को ही जो है वहां पर जिम्मेदार ठहरा दें। स्कूल पूरी रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी लेने को तैयार है कि ईमानदारी से जो गाइडलाइंस बनेंगी उसको फॉलो करेगा। और सरकार को मैंने कहा जैसे सैनिटाइजेशन का एक बहुत बड़ा खर्चा है कि किस प्रकार जो है डेली स्कूल सैनिटाइज हो, कैसे बसेस रोज सैनिटाइज हो। और दूसरी तरफ से 2 महीने से स्कूल्स के पास फीस भी नहीं आ रही है और आगे भी फीस कम आने की संभावना है। गवर्नमेंट के नए ऑर्डर और जो है इंस्ट्रक्शंस जारी हो रही है जिससे पेरेंट्स भी कम फीस दे रहे हैं और आने वाले समय में खर्चा स्कूल को बहुत बियर करना पड़ेगा। तो मैं ये चाहूंगा कि सरकार भी इस पे कदम बढ़ाए और सैनिटाइजेशन वगैरह के खर्चे जो है सरकार कुछ रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी उठाए और स्कूल भी जिम्मेदारी से काम करे, क्योंकि जो बच्चे हैं वो हमारे बच्चे भी हैं। हम सबको रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी से काम करना होगा, लेकिन अगर हम ब्लेमिंग से काम करेंगे तो वो एक बहुत मुश्किल काम हो जाएगा। स्कूल का भी भय है कि अगर उनको ब्लेम किया जाएगा कि कोई ऐसी बात होगी, स्कूल में तो कोई इस समय कोरोना नहीं है, अगर किसी वजह से कोई कोरोना आया तो उसके कारण बहुत सारे होंगे। अकेला स्कूल को अगर रिस्पॉन्सिबल ठहराया गया तो मैनेजमेंट को डर रहेगा, तो वो स्कूल खोलने से डरेंगे।
ठीक है, okay, I understand what you're saying. Let me also go across to another viewer on the phone line. Vinay is calling us from Gurugram. Good evening, Vinay. What would you like to say?
Yeah, thank you so much for giving me the opportunity. And can you hear me, please? Hello,
yes, I can. Go ahead, please.
See, the thing is that, when you're talking about schools, you please remember that class 10th and class 12th are not for education, they are for your career. So as far as I am concerned, these two 10th and 12th should be opened ASAP and think about the rest is because the children have to take a career path. So without wasting any time, the government must come out with a formula to take care of this because this will impact their future. This will impact the future directly. So if you're a student till class 7th or 8th, it really doesn't matter even if you're having online classes till maybe October or December. At least the children, if not 100%, they get to get the education by at least 60-70%. But this doesn't work for class 10th and 12th. So I urge the government to at least open 10th and 12th immediately so that the children don't have to suffer in the career because this opportunity doesn't come back. And I would like the views from.
Okay, thank you so much for calling, Vinay. Okay, thank you for calling and sharing your views. Let me actually go back to Dr. Nanda on that. Dr. Nanda, of course, there are so many layers to this. One aspect is the fact that different cities have different extent of the pandemic, different rules and relaxations or restrictions. How do we ensure that that doesn't mean that some fall behind while the others get a benefit? And the point that our viewer was just making about classes as well. Some senior classes perhaps need to return sooner to school than maybe the junior ones.
Yeah. If you recollect, I mentioned there cannot be one whole India policy. I think we have to look at school districts, even I think lower level than that, and look at what are some of the areas where it is not affected by COVID at this point of time. So we can immediately open those schools. Then also look at what are the local schools. which schools are not dependent on buses and children coming from outside. We can very quickly do that segregation and first, in the first phase, open schools that only have local children and areas which do not have COVID at this point of time, and schools that are not reliant on buses. I think that can be a phased manner one can look at, and rightly we can first open for little older children and then open for smaller children, taking into account how these things are working. Because as I said, this is new normal. We cannot be locked down, and we cannot keep the children locked down for 3 years. And it's not just question of also 1 year. So how do we kind of resume, and we cannot deny them education. So I think even from a public health perspective, one has to look at how children. Somebody spoke about children carrying infection to homes. Now in a lockout situation where we are no longer locked down, the responsibility now lies protecting the elderly within our families. So we have to separate the children and all the young adults that are moving outside from the elderly population that are at home. So it is going to be leadership at household level, which is going to protect the elderly, because otherwise there is no other option available to us. And then, the phased manner opening also, as I mentioned, look at which are the safe zones, open them immediately. Look at, suppose, there are children coming in buses. Allow those children not, to work, to study from home and reassure them that there will be makeup classes available for them once things are a little better. We have to kind of have a very flexible approach this time. We cannot be talking about a one all India policy or even a state policy. I think it's very important to look at, in a decentralized manner at this point of time.
Okay, very interesting points made, and I do agree to a great extent with you. Let me also bring in another viewer. Francis is on the phone line calling us from Bengaluru. Good evening, Francis. Go ahead, please. What would you like to say?
Good evening, ma'am, and good evening to the panelists. I just wanted to say that, opening the schools is a little too early for the kids. And I just wanted to disagree with two of our panelists. One gentleman who was talking about the diet of veg and non-veg, which is no way connected to the COVID. I think that's the wrong communication being given. And to Mrs. Nanda, with regard to children not being infected, the reason why children haven't been infected now and their numbers are not up is because we have parents that kept them back home, and nothing to do with the COVID. Once the kids go back, they will be asymptomatic, maybe, and they will bring the the disease back, to the elderly in the house. So I totally disagree. I think this is more a political agenda and more the fact that, they want to collect the fees. Giving the fees is not an issue, but it's the life of our kids, the future of India, which is more important. I think one way of going about it is, like the gentleman mentioned, we are overrating education in this country. Truncate the syllabus, make it half the syllabus, and, do a little more of online classes for our kids. And we'll see, probably in September or November when the strain is a little more died out, and, then the kids can be sent back. But as of now, I totally disagree with the fact of, opening schools this early. I think some of our ministers have to go back to Parliament first and, check it out and stop using our future generation as guinea pigs to see how far the COVID spreads.
Okay, I take your point, what you're saying, Mr. Francis. Thank you so much for calling. Just to point out, though, both of our medical experts have also said that it's not, the children can be the carriers, and yes, there is a threat of the fact that if they come back home, the others, especially the elderly in the family, can risk of being exposed to that infection, and becomes more complicated for the senior citizens, obviously. But Dr. Nanda, do you want to respond to the other point that the viewer was making, that perhaps for children the rate isn't so high because we don't let them go out, so the infection is also lower, most of them are indoors?
Well, let us talk about the vulnerable kids that are, I'm not talking about the privileged kids that are, at home. Let us for a moment also talk about the kids of construction workers, of domestic workers. Now, these kids are not protected. They are out playing. They are out I'm seeing them, all of us, everyone who has a neighborhood kind of sees them. They are out all the time. So I'm not talking about just also, kind of ad hoc knowledge. I think there is global evidence now coming up. And if you look at, the global deaths worldwide, the children mortality is quite low. And also the COVID, the intensity, the symptoms, and they have, even if they are affected, they are quite mild and recover, well. It is only the elderly and people with comorbidities that are affected and that are dying out of COVID, not just in India, but I think worldwide. And it is mostly people above the age of 65 that are at risk. And especially also it is compounded by comorbidities that somebody may have.
Dr. Bhan, do you want to comment on that? Because I think a lot of people do have this concern, especially because initially the rule that was announced by the government was to say that children below the age of 10 and adults above the age of 60 shouldn't be stepping out at all. And so there's obviously a larger concern about exposure to children, what will play on the minds of parents as well when they take this decision.
Yeah, so I think as Dr. Nanda is pointing out, I think the evidence seems to indicate that older kids, maybe infants and neonates, yes, they might be at some element of risk, but older kids, typically the kids who go to school, seemingly are not facing the brunt of serious infection, anything which would make them likely to be hospitalized or have to go to an ICU or would be put on a ventilator. Those are the ones we are losing usually to the infection, right? Most kids have asymptomatic infection or very mild symptoms. But having said that, there is a certain amount of risk, but it's not likely to be major enough that we need to worry about it. Obviously, parents would still worry about, the fact that their kids could get infected because, there is so much uncertainty and concern and anxiety around COVID-19. So even if it is a mild infection, nobody would want it for their kids. But, on the lob side, you have this whole discussion around, is it okay to just keep your kids cooped up at home? And if yes, for how long? We've already seen this happen now with the lockdown for a couple of months. And, it does take its toll, both on the parents, the families, as well as the kids. Because, as I said earlier, there are consequences, not being able to go out and, mix with individuals your age and have those social interactions, which are also very formative. It's not just about the textbooks. It's also the opportunity to play, get some outdoor time, to be able to talk to your friends and connect with them. And that is how also a lot of personality building happens. So I think that is why I said, we need to have some element of risk-benefit calculus talked about. I think that's where, maybe immediately, I don't think it's a good idea to think about opening schools, but we need to talk about the process. We need to talk about how will we do it? Do we do it in a graduated manner? If yes, how are we going to make sure that there is staggering? Because as we all know, in the old, in the not so distant past, there would be times where there would be traffic jams literally in front of schools with so many parents coming to drop off their kids, buses coming to ferry kids in, and there is no way you can maintain physical distancing in those situations. So if you're going to stagger school hours, how are you going to do it? What does that mean for parents and their own work schedules? Are there going to be enablers in terms of support from offices both in the government and public sector to understand that there will be some parents who might need to have staggered work times as well to be able to cater to these kinds of school timings? Because unless we have those enablers, we're going to have a little bit of chaos. So it's not just about the schools and the schedules.
Right.
It's also around, how does the rest of the family fit in their whole work schedule, their lives around, because, everything goes to schedule, right, when you have kids at home.
Right, absolutely. I just want to read out a few responses that we're also getting from viewers. Amit Sharma says, no, I believe if vaccination is going to be invented in near future, then schools should be opened only at that time. No parent can think of sending their wards to school at this critical time. I've also got Sanjay Kapoor who says, no, schools must remain closed until the graph at least slides down to at least beyond the peak, and only after that should we actually open up the schools. That's essentially what many people are replying, even on social media, and that's what people who are calling us are also saying. In fact, some of them, parents, have actually said, until there is no vaccine, we shouldn't have school for children. That's the view that's coming in from many parents right now. And that was Anup Deshmukh who sent that tweet to me. One more question, Mr. Virul Shah, let me ask you this. To what extent will the schools actually be able to ensure that these protocols are followed? Health, hygiene, safety, even counseling the children, even ensuring that mentally it doesn't, become a huge burden or impact them. At some point, the schools will have to figure that part out as well.
See, as I told you, parents take care of kids at home when they are out, when they come back from the home. But 8 hours they are with the school team. The school is taking them as their personal kids. School is going to take this full responsibility. Schools are going to give the proper protocol list to the parents, teachers. They'll give a proper parents, teachers meeting with giving up their different details, that what are the protocols in that they'll be disinfecting the school buses, the classes. Gradually, after every classes, they'll be giving up proper sanitization in the washrooms. These are some kind of protocols which they will be following up regularly.
Okay, and the concern that is there about the safety and of the staff itself, how will that be managed, Mr. Shah? Because obviously if the suggestions, and for example in Karnataka the suggestions that are being considered is shift system or alternate day system, but will that become a burden on the staff? Is there a scope to actually add on and bring on more teachers then?
Yeah, this shift, we have to think on the shift. That will be an add-on on the staff, but yeah, the school management will be looking into it, because at present it is not possible to accumulate all the classes at a time and give a big bunch over there. There should be a break, the odd and even dates. That is the reason I'm telling you that there will be an odd and even date. And even in the classrooms, there will be a maintenance of the benches. They'll be leaving up on the odd seats. There is an arrangement they'll be sitting off. So school management will think on this.
Okay, let's see. Let's wait and watch how the rules are defined, and if actually we do see a decision in the month of July for the schools to be reopened, it's not going to be easy. Perhaps it will be one of the biggest policy challenges that we will see for our government, for our central government, state government, schools, school management, the teaching staff, and the biggest decision even for the parents, viewers. On one hand is the risk of losing one entire academic year. On the one hand is the concern that when children are locked up inside a home, how it impacts them, how it impacts their mental health, and what can be done. The fact that somebody needs to be there to even take care of them if they have working parents. Then what happens when the parents have to get back to office but the children are not allowed to go to school? But on the other hand, let's not forget that while children have so far largely shown mild symptoms, they can become carriers and then further take on that infection to the rest of the family, to their buildings, neighborhood, societies, and that could become a concern. The big concern will also be managing the children, especially the younger ones in schools. There's only so much that you can discipline and stop them or even explain to them of what they should or shouldn't do, and that will then become the onus of the schools. And you've heard from some of our guests right now already saying that if you start blaming the management for COVID infections, then not too many schools will open up. So there is so much to discuss, so much to be thought about, consulted before any decision is actually taken on this issue.